Good morning and welcome to episode number 5 of In Bad Form. I am your host, Mark Levitt, and today's podcast is going to be an invitation to a group talk, a regular group talk. What I'd like to do is start a regular group talk monthly. Could lead to more, but start monthly. Similar to the group talks that you've seen me put on my YouTube channel with the POK group. The only difference is that the POK group is private. That's a private group that I was invited to. But since it was private, I wasn't able to invite outside members. So what I'd like to do is start a monthly, or like I said, it could lead to more, group talks that are open to all, open to anybody, including POK people or not. So the first series of talks that anybody's, or if you've watched, the first series of these group talks, they were focused on pretty general practice, surrendering, talking about suffering, just talking about the where the rubber meets the road, life itself, the actions of life. But the next talk I want to talk about is the third book, and that one's a little bit more complicated. It's the trianistic model of reality, and I'll send anybody the book, a PDF, if they want it, so you could keep up with it. But what I like to do is it's going to take more than one talk to talk about that. It'll probably take several talks. But that's what I want to start with is the trianistic model of reality. And like I said, because it is complicated, I think that'll be a good first series of group talks so people could ask questions to bring information out that otherwise I wouldn't think to bring out. So, and also other questions people may answer other people's questions that are there. So I just think that'll be a good idea to do that with the group dynamic. And another thing that I want to do that I just thought of too is I want to start for the lack of a better word, I'll just call it a Dzogchen talk. Could be Zen, but I want to start with some Dzogchen material bi-weekly. Now, originally, when I thought about that, it came from a spontaneous situation where I was helping my wife. So I was reading her some Dzogchen books, and it was really powerful for her, and actually it was powerful for me too, extremely powerful. But I'll get to that in a minute. But what came out of that is she suggested, "Why don't I do this on video?" And the reason she said that is because when I'm reading, I should back up. For years, decades actually, I first read the Dzogchen books, in the 90s. And whenever I've tried to turn her onto them, she had no interest. Couldn't read them. Liked everything else that I would suggest or recommend, anything else that I read. But when it came to the Dzogchen and the Zen, it just didn't resonate. Wasn't helpful. But this time, when I was reading it, it was very helpful for her because this time I was reading it. That was the difference. I came to her, or actually, she said she wanted to renew her, getting serious about her practice. So I said, I just thought back on my life and thought back on my memories and thought the most important thing to me, the most crucial, the most elemental, instrumental book in my life was a book called The Cycle of Day and Night. And it's a Dzogchen book by Namki Norbu. But anyway, so I was like, okay, if you really, really want to get serious, then this is what helped me. And then as I was reading it to her, I'm reading it real slow, sentence by sentence, stopping and, sharing what it meant for me. Sometimes repeating a sentence just for the sake of repeating it. Because that's the thing with Dzogchen. It's so slippery and ethereal. It sounds like maybe you may be reading nothing or hearing nothing. But that's just how deep it is how subtle it is. So anyway, and when I sent that out in an email invitation, people I put it that way. I miswrote it in making it sound like I was going to also do that as a group talk. Originally, I was thinking it was just something I would read and read real slowly, and then people could listen to. But since I did get so many responses that people said that I wrote it in such a way that I made it sound like that was also going to be a group talk. I thought that's actually a good idea, a better idea, because that way people could ask questions as I'm doing it, and again uncover insights that I wouldn't have thought if people didn't ask questions. So that's something we'll do also bi-weekly. That's open to anybody. Um, but so please email. Oh yes. So please email me or contact me and let me know that you're interested. And then I'll put you on a list to send you Zoom links. So that way, when we set a date, that's another thing too, is it seems like it's the most default day to do it because that's the thing too, is I have to accommodate readers from California time, Pacific time, all the way to Beijing to China, which is a 15-hour different time zone. So it's really hard, or it could be impossible, but definitely it's going to be really hard to make it accommodatable for everybody. But I thought I'd at least try, and to try to attempt. When I did the math, it seems like 10 o'clock a.m. Uh, Eastern, no, I'm sorry, Pacific time, which would be 1 o'clock Eastern time, which would be about 6 or 7 o'clock time in most of continental Europe, anywhere from the UK to Germany. And then Beijing is 12 hours away, so that would still be, within reason at 10 o'clock at night. So that to me seems like the best way to do it. But I've asked everybody to send your suggestions of what time. But it sounds like from the responses I've got back from the email that the best time for everybody is weekends, which would be Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and then Europe's like 5 or 6 hours ahead, so 6 or 7, and Asia would be again 10 o'clock at night. So that's what we'll do it unless we come up with something else. Obviously we'll adapt to meet the occasion. So yes, please send me your email address, or actually, it doesn't. You could either email me, put it in the comment section, or go to my website. I got a website with a message board. But there's tons of ways to contact me. So just in some way, let me know. But I need your email address because that's what I need to send the Zoom link to. So once we settle on the first date, the first Sunday, I'll send a Zoom link. All right. So, okay. So now I actually went into this a little bit already, but I was going to talk about how this came up. The whole idea of all these talks came up. So I had COVID recently. Somewhere I'm sure I wrote it in emails and other things, but no, it wasn't serious COVID, and I'm fully recovered. Feel super good. But during that time period, both me and my wife had time off, and it was necessary because I'm doing way too much, doing a full time job plus all this plus a family. So I think COVID was a happy accident. That was good because it's a forceful rest. So, but anyway, so my wife had some dread, let's say, about going back to work. So yeah, it brought up all these feelings. It brought up a lot of stuff. So that's why I said, look, if you really want help, if you really want to get down to this, this is what helped me. And it was, like I said, that book, Cycle of Day and Night. And then when I read it to her, as I said earlier, it was as powerful for me as it was for her. Who knows? It could have been more powerful for me. But the reason I say that is because I hadn't looked or thought about these books in over 20 years or 20 years. Um, so to go from, and that's the thing too about these teachings too, is they're so good. They encourage you and they teach you to drop them as you go. So that was easy for me to do. The very essence of the teachings is to drop everything and not be attached, not try to, control things. So they did such a good job that I just completely even let the teachings go and everything about it. Didn't think anything about it for 20 years. But anyway, so flash forward now, 20 years. I'm reading it to my wife, and I'm getting blown away. It's just reminding me of how powerful that was in the first place. And like I said earlier, and I don't know if I said this earlier, but if you count all the pages that I actually read of Dzogchen and Zen, it probably wouldn't accumulate to 100 pages. That's how powerful it is, though. You can't really read more than a paragraph or so until you just have to put the book down and absorb the blow that you just received. So I went from that. I went from not reading for 20 years at all, not just Dzogchen books, but because of the experience from Dzogchen, I could not read books for 20 years. I had an aversion. It's not an aversion? No, actually, not an aversion. That's the thing is, I would want to read. I'd hear about people reading a book. I'd see people reading a book. I think that sounds fun. I tried to pick up a book, and I just could not read. It could not stick. It couldn't hold my interest. The words just weren't hitting my brain. But it just felt like a magnet, like repelling. Just like, nope, I can't do it. So I went from that to 20 years later, reading this to my wife and getting so enthralled and so enthused by it that I ended up ordering a whole 10-book series on some more teachings. So, yeah, there's a different time and there's a different season for everything. And whatever you're going through is just a phase. And so that phase of not wanting to read is done. And I'm like super, gosh, reinvigorated, excited, and looking at it with a fresh set of eyes since it is 20 years later. All right. So, okay. So the reason, so I'm in love with these teachings, and I thought it would be fun and true to where my interest is at. Yes, that's the difference. Is before this, I was thinking, okay, I want to do a podcast. I know generally speaking what I want to talk about, but there's a lot of work if you have to think about it, and I don't like that. I'm just not accustomed to planning and thinking. So this was perfect because all I have to do is talk to what is truly where my interest is at right now. And this is where my interest is at for me. This is where my interest is at for my wife, for my family life. And then this is my interest for sharing. So it's going to be effortless. That's the difference between this experience and the direction I was going before with the podcast. So I just want to give a brief history of my exposure to Dzogchen. When I first discovered it, actually my cousin introduced it to me, and I didn't like it at all. He just sent me, the first book was a Dzogchen book called The Mirror, by Namki Noribu, and I couldn't get it at all. It was a tiny, tiny little book, probably 50 pages or something, less than 100 pages, and I just couldn't get it. I would open it, I'd look at it, and it meant nothing. The words were just slippery and ephemeral, and it meant nothing. I was getting much more benefit from reading what I was reading, which was general Tibetan Buddhism and some Zen. And the Zen probably is what prepared me to be able to read the Dzogchen, because after continuing to read Zen, then when I picked up the book, the Dzogchen book, then all of a sudden I got it. Like, the whatever filter was there was lifted, and I was able to penetrate the meaning of the words that were on the page. And then it just felt like the most amazing teaching ever, and that was it. That was the last teaching. That would be the last thing I would ever be in love with. Okay. Um, so what I want to do now is take you through those books, the books that I read. I'm going to start with the books that I read, um, and I want to take you through them as I read them, with the attitude that I read in them. Oh, and the reason I say that is because uh, Dzogchen is part of the Buddhist, tradition at large. So because of that, it's wrapped in, religious tone, tradition, a lot of jargon, a lot of, just colorful, um, aesthetic quality to it that has nothing to do with the essence. And only have always I've always only been interested in the very essence of the teachings. The luckiest thing or the best quality I've ever had is that I've always had an inner magnet that has only led me to the very best books. Every single book was, it turns out, historically is considered to be like a classic. And it was just by random. I was reading before there was internet. So you went to the bookstore and that was it. You had no guidance. But still, I was only led to the very, very, very best books. And even within those books, that same magnet only led me to the most relevant parts of the book, where I would discard and read over stuff anytime it mentioned any formalities or things to remember, um, anything having to do with tradition, anything that was not directly pointing at the essence of what I was looking for, I would just discard. And that's the way I would read those books. And that's the way I'm going to do the same for you. I'm going to read them slowly. Like I said, some sentences I'll just repeat again. Maybe at some parts I'll stop and I'll tell you what that part meant to me, to try to bring it to life. And now I think it's also a good idea, as people wanted to do it in a group talk, so people could actually stop and ask a question before I go off and make too many complications. So, skip the formalities and only get to the core. And so that's another thing too, is that as I was reading the books, I was reminded that the books are very, very short, and they all have pretty much the same format. It starts with like a page or sometimes a two with just pages of gratitude, where they're giving your paying your homage to all the gurus and the lineage that this came from. And I used to just breeze right past it. And actually, I still do breeze right past it. But this time, when I saw those words, I pay homage to the guru, and then they go on to list the whole lineage of gurus. Before, I would just breeze through it because, like I said, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the essence. And I bypassed that. But this time, when I saw that, I had a different feeling. Not that I read it, still have no interest in reading it. I'm not going to read it to you. I could care less. But it did remind me that devotion I did have for those books. So even though I would skip past the part about the homage to the, I pay homage to the guru and I pay homage to the lineage and I pay homage to all this, even though I would skip right past that, spontaneously throughout the book, I could not help but to kiss almost every single page as I read it. As I'm reading an insight, spontaneously, I would just be welled up with gratitude and devotion. And the only thing you could do, the only thing that I know to do, is just to kiss the book and thank it, saying thank you, thank you. So just keep that in mind, too, the devotion and the gratitude that we're even lucky enough to have these teachings. And to feel that gratitude, thank you. And it doesn't have to be gratitude to anything. For all you non-dualists who, there's nothing else but this, just gratitude. Gratitude doesn't have to be towards anything, just an expression of gratitude. Thank you, feeling that gratitude. But anyway, I thought that was interesting because, like I said, I did used to just breeze past that devotional part. I'm not sure exactly what word you'd use. But spontaneously through it, oh my God, I could not pay enough devotion and enough gratitude towards the insights and what this book was pointing to. Um, so, another thing too I want to add before I go on is that when I did write an email about this, writing email people, I put in the word special, like these special teachings. And that's one of the things that if I were to reread that, I would have taken out that word special. But I didn't I didn't reread it. I just put it out in a hurry. But someone said something about that, and rightly so. I get that. Someone, oh, I know. First, I should tell you what they said. Someone said, yes, I'd be happy to attend, but I'm not looking for anything special or anything like that. And I was like, oh, aha, I did write the word special. And I did mean that. That's the whole thing. But the reality is it's okay to consider it special or anything. But the thing is just to realize that the only thing that makes it special is you. I make it special. Mark makes it special. It's not special. But it's also not special. And it's not both special and not special. And it's not neither special nor not special. It's just what it is. But that was very insightful to somebody point out that I'm not looking for anything special. And the reason I point this out is because I do find myself finding these special. I do make special on them, but I don't even attach to that. I don't care that I make it special. I recognize it. I see it, and whatever. That'll, sort itself out. I don't have to try to change or control it. Even that's perfect. But I think that's beautiful to talk about and both at the same time, to acknowledge that I do see this specialness and I do see the, something I'm just very, very attracted to. But ultimately, these teachings are not special. That's very true. They're not special at all. I make special. All right. So, and that's the last thing I wanted to write too. If you are serious about this, or if you develop a seriousness about this, you should look into an actual lineage holder, someone of this, because this is a live lineage, going back all the way to Grab Dorje. But if you look at the words of the old lineage masters, it's really difficult to read. It's really hard for us to gain any insights out of it. That's why you have people like Namki Norbu expounding upon something that Grab Dorje wrote, thousands of years ago. So, but anyway, yes. So there is a lineage, an unbroken lineage. I wish I had this. I don't. Well, I'll just tell you what I remember from just memory. If you go back and you look into the history of Dzogchen, it gets really mysterious and kind of weird. They say it comes from, or that the Dzogchen teachings did not originate on Earth or something. They came from a other place, unworldly, unearthly, beyond this world. And that these teachings are also on 13 other planets in, I guess, what would be our universe. But at the same time, the same history, or the same, I don't know, whoever's writing that and then, telling you about the history of Dzogchen, they're also telling you, obviously, there's no way to validate any of these things historically, but they mention it just for the sake of letting you know that these teachings are not specific to anything. They're not specific to any teaching, philosophy, because they are part of the Buddhist tradition. But historically, when we read the books, I'll even explain that, the relationship between Dzogchen and Buddhism. But anyway, yes. So if you do get serious, I do encourage you to look, because this is a live lineage that's been passed down for, anyway. Supposedly it started outside the stars, outside the planet. 13 different planets got it. We're one of them. And Grab Dorje is supposedly the first human teacher of Dzogchen, and then everybody underneath that is a lineage holder, all the way through the guy that I learned from, only his books, never met him, but Namki Norbu. So Namki Norbu is the books that I'll be reading. Those are pretty much, I'm pretty sure, the only books I've read Dzogchen or Namki Norbu. And what Namki Norbu will do is he'll give commentary on something by Grob Dorje or other people that I can't pronounce their name, because they write real quick. What they'd say is only a paragraph or a sentence. That's it. And then he'll take 10 pages to expound upon that sentence. So, again, okay, but Namku Norbo is not alive. Unfortunately, he died not too long ago. And again, I have not kept up with I've never been part of the Dzogchen community. I've never kept up with anything. I read it 20 years ago, I let it go, and that's it. But I do know that there is at least one someone who I guess you could consider to be in the lineage of Dzogchen. His name is Tenzin Wangyao. And I'll write this in the comment form so you could see it spelled out. But Tenzin, Tenzin Wangyao, Wangyal. And the reason I even try to qualify that with the saying I'm assuming he's part of the lineage is because he's actually not a teacher of Dzogchen, but he's a teacher of Bon. But if you go back and look at the history, Dzogchen just took Bon and switched the name. So they're identical. I read both Tenzin Wangyao and Namku Norbu. Those are really the only modern people that I know. And actually, and Tenzin Wangyao is actually appointed by the Dalai Lama to be responsible for the I guess carrying on the tradition of Bon, because Bon predates Buddhism, it predates Dzogchen, it predates everything. It may even predate Hinduism. I'm not exactly sure, but Tenzin Wangyao, he's also is the only person that wrote on the Trikaya, which is the book, or no, as much as he did on the Trikaya, on the book that I wrote, the Trianistic Model of Reality. So anyway, if you're interested, that's the other thing too. The reason I mentioned Tenzin Wangyao is he actually offers retreats. And I used to live in Charlottesville. I was right next to him for 20 years, and I never went to one, and I wish I did. But he's right there in Charlottesville. He gives retreats, week-long retreats. So if you take to this, I would really encourage you to dig deeper into this. And not just that, I'll also send a link. I'll try to put it on here so anybody could have it, but anybody that wants to be part of this group, I'll also send you a YouTube channel, an incredible YouTube channel where a girl from India, a woman from India, is reading the highest teachings, and they could be Dzogchen, Zen, even Advaita and everything, but I just go into the Dzogchen folder, and it's everything, anything you could ever want. And it's completely different than what I'll be doing. She's doing it true to the word. All she does is read the books, read the sutras as they are. Now, she reads them very slowly. She's got a really nice voice. She's got nice music behind it. She pauses a lot. And sometimes she'll even go, it seems like a minute between paragraphs. But it's incredible. It's something you could have in the backdrop. And you don't have to care if you don't understand every single word or every single thing. It's the same gist. They're pointing you to the same spot. But that's another thing I encourage if you enjoy, this at all, what we're doing. So the difference is what I'll be doing, and the reason I point that out to her, the reason I point hers out instead of mine is like I said, mine's different. I'm going to be the opposite of what she's doing. I'm going to be stopping, starting, repeating stuff, expounding upon stuff, whereas she would just be doing a pure, clean reading. So both of these, I think, would be beneficial. Okay. That's that. So it looks like the last thing. Another thing that I was going to say too is if you do watch that commentary, if you have any questions about it, then you could just tag it, put a time on there and say, hey, I was listening to this video, and at 10 minutes and 48 seconds, I didn't get this. And then I'd be happy to look at it and give you my take on it. Okay, so before we're done, and I don't even have a timer on here, don't know how long this is, but there we go, a half hour. All right, so I'll try to do this quickly. So the last thing I'll leave off on is what I find unique about Dzogchen. What attracted me to Dzogchen that is unique about it as opposed to everything else, all the other non-dual teachings. What I find so special about Dzogchen. All right, so the first thing is that my only other main exposure to non-duality was mainly Zen, some Tibetan Buddhism, and they would always just use the word emptiness, which I got. Everyone understands emptiness. Or I don't want to say everyone understands emptiness, but we know what we're talking about when we say emptiness. We know what we're pointing to. But the difference is in Dzogchen, they would never just use the word emptiness. The word emptiness would always be associated with the word clarity or luminous. So they wouldn't, anytime they'd use the word emptiness, it was always used completely as by saying clarity and emptiness. They would never just say emptiness alone. It was always clarity and emptiness or luminous. And that subtle difference is huge once you start to get really deep and drill down into it, because the emptiness part only refers to the space aspect of aware space, whereas the clarity points to the aware part of aware space. So all there is aware space, and they're not two things. There's not awareness, and space. There's just aware space. Now that's my word, or not my word, but the word they use is clarity and emptiness, but it's the same thing. So clarity would be the awareness, and the emptiness would be the spatial aspect. And by space or by emptiness, I just mean the capacity, the very capacity for existence. That's space. That's what emptiness is. All right, so that's the first thing that I find so unique and valuable about Dzogchen, is they always emphasize the clarity and emptiness. And like I said, it might not sound much now, but once you really start to drill down deep, you're gonna see why clarity and emptiness is so important. Okay. The second thing is that everything is already self-perfected, which means that there's nothing to modify. So that means that you already start. In other words, practice cultivating awareness is only something you can continue. Enlightenment, awareness, this is not something that you could add. This is only something that you could continue. So it's unique to be able to have a practice where you see that everything is self-perfected, including your thoughts, including your anger, including your attachment, including your identification. It's going back one step deeper than simply being free from all the things that we think, that we tell ourselves we want to be free from. Instead, it takes a step back that you're free from even that. In other words, even if you do find yourself attaching, even if you do find yourself in that, then you're still free, because at any second you can see through what you're attaching to. So it's not something that you have to kick yourself for. It's not something you have to judge yourself for. It's not something that you have to say, oh my God, here I go thinking again. Here I go identifying again. No, when you read enough Dzogchen, you're going to see even that is self-perfected. Even your thoughts, even your identification, all of it are just spontaneous arisings. And they're not to be avoided, and they're not to be pursued. They're just to be left alone as they are. And that's a very, very powerful thing when you're freed to never have to modify anything again. Never have to modify your thoughts, never have to modify anything. Your awareness, and you're not beginning awareness, you're continuing awareness. You could abide in awareness, but you can't begin. You can't bring something new. You can't start. You can't enter. Oops. You can't. Um, and that's going to be a huge different attitude towards your practice, to where everything becomes free from the very beginning, and um, even your delusions are free, even your mistakes are free, even your, like I said, your anger, whatever arises, that's self perfected, and your only job as a Dzogchen practitioner is just to watch it. There it goes. Watch it come and watch it go, because whatever has a beginning will have an ending. Whatever arises will leave. That's what the arising does. Um, Another concept that was new for me reading Dzogchen is the spontaneous arising that I probably just mentioned. The idea of how everything is spontaneous, and you can't control it. And to take that so much even deeper, to have an insight that you see that so much deeper, that you see that not only is everything spontaneously arising around you, the appearances, the world, the colors and shape that we take in, but also your thoughts, also your feelings, also your attachments. These are all spontaneous. Another thing, kind of tying back into both of those, is something that was new to me, was that thoughts are just ornaments, just as all form. So I gave this example in my book. In my book, I was talking about backing up. So right now we're backed up enough to see that the world's out there and we're the space for the world. But what isn't so obvious is that the world, or the content or form, whatever word you want to use for what you experience, it's not just the appearances, it's not just the physical things that we see, it's also our mind. It's by our small mind, it's our feelings, it's our attachment, it's our identification, it's our anger. Even those things are objects, like the objects that we see, physical objects, refrigerators, cars, and trees. So when I gave that exercise in my book about backing up, to see that not only are you the the space for the cars and trucks and people that you see, but you're also the space for the anger that arises. You're also the space for the feelings that arise, the attachments that arise, anything. You're the space for that. That's where I got that from. That's where I got that from. The teaching that thoughts are just ornaments, just like all form. Everything that you see is just ornaments of the Buddha or the Dharmakaya. Once we get into that, we'll get into the lingo, but they're just ornaments. And to put thoughts and feelings into the same category as physical form is a profound insight, because you see it's just content. It's just conditions. Form is form, whether it be the houses and the people you see, or the moods and experiences that arise in your mind. Because, by the way, one thing I didn't put down, but in Dzogchen, the main thing behind it is the king that created everything. The king that creates everything is the mind. So they call the supreme source the mind. The supreme source is the mind, or awareness, whatever word you want to use. So then the next thing that I like about Dzogchen, that I found interesting or different, unique about it, was the whole teaching that I've already been through, but now you can see where I got it from, that it's okay if you follow this, just don't follow that. And I've talked about this a lot, and that's where it came from. The Dzogchen teachings are just teaching you don't be attached. They're just saying don't modify, don't control. But it's okay if you do. If you do try to control, or if you do try to modify, that's fine. That's a spontaneous arising. Now just don't follow that. Don't try to avoid it, and don't try to attach to it. Don't try to indulge it, and don't try to push it away. But if you do find yourself following that, then it's still perfectly fine because you could stop following that. So at any point, you're free because we're always here. This is always it, no matter what. You may have delusions that, oh no, I've gone off the path, or oh no, I'm thinking and I'm judging myself and bad things. It doesn't matter. You're doing that from awareness. So you may forget that all there is this aware space, but it doesn't change the fact that you never left this aware space. So, so that was a powerful teaching, that it's okay if you find yourself doing anything. So don't attach to anything, but if you do find yourself attaching, that's okay. Just don't attach to that. And if you do attach to that, then just don't attach to that. Whatever, at any point, just break the attachment and you're right back home. You can't start anything. You're already here. You could only become aware of where you're already at. And everything is pointing you right back to where you already are. That's all these are, is just pointing to the aware space that already is. There's nothing new. There's nothing that needs to be added. Just a pointer to what already is underneath all of the obfuscations and thoughts and delusions. So the next thing is that I wrote down is to not add anything to what you already are. I thought that was really cool. When I was reading Namki Norbu, he'd always say, don't even call yourself a Buddhist. That's why I've never considered myself a Buddhist, because that made sense. Why call yourself a Buddhist? Why call yourself anything? Because why add anything to what you already are? What you already are is enough. This aware space. Why add Buddhist to it? So I love that. Don't add anything to what you already are. And what you already are is this aware space. That's it. So don't add anything. You don't have to add anything. All right. And the other thing I liked, Namki Norbu, Dzogchen, is whatever topic you could bring up. Let's say to be a vegetarian, or should I work for money, or whatever the question is, the answer is always the same. Meat, no matter. It doesn't matter. There's no thing you could put forth to the Dzogchen master and say, should I do this or should I do that? The answer is always this, that, no matter. Think, don't think, no matter. Eat meat, don't eat meat, no matter. Practice, don't practice, no matter. Do this, do that, no matter. I love that. And this one I've already talked about, but the only practice is to abide or to continue. So many practices, so many teachings, they talk to you like you're a student. They talk to you like they're trying to get you to enter a stream, like they're trying to get you to start something new. When Dzogchen doesn't talk to you like that. They talk to you as if you're already there. And that's why they use words like continue or abide, because there's nothing new to start. The other thing that I loved about Dzogchen is the base, the path, and the fruit, that concept, the base and the path and the fruit. And that's basically what all my books were based on, was the base, the path, and the fruit. My last book, The Trianistic Model of Reality, is just that. It's my interpretation of my experience of the Trianistic model, which came from Dzogchen or Bon, I'm not sure who gets credit for that, with what they call the Trikaya. And that's their example of the triune. As I said before, all religions have one, but the Dzogchen one is the one that I learned from, the Trikaya. And that's the only one that went into it deep. So I'll go into what the base, path, and fruit is. It's basically everything has a base, a path, and a fruit. So the base would just be, so let's start with awareness. So the base would be awareness. What's its path? What is its action? Action is to be aware. And what is the fruit of awareness, becoming aware? That's consciousness, or awareness of awareness. That's the fruit. That's the fold that I talk about. But anyway, you could apply that to anything. There's always a base, a path, and a fruit to anything. The base is what you are, the path is what you do, and the fruit is going to be the result of your path. So the path is going to flow spontaneously from the base, and then the fruit is going to flow spontaneously from the path. So the base is basically your insight, where you're at right now, your knowledge, where your understanding. That's your base. From your base, from your insight, from the depth of your insight, spontaneously is going to flow your path, your actions. Your actions and your path are going to be based on your insight, your base. And then from your actions, spontaneously will result in the fruit. So the base and the path and the fruit are always one. And that's basically the concept that, we'll be getting into more deeper once we actually get into the Dzogchen teachings. But the last thing that I loved about Dzogchen that is unique is that the only practice of awareness is just attentiveness, just to be there, just to be a witness. Simple as that. What is awareness and what is a do? That's it. Awareness is to be aware. It's that simple. So anyway, I see we're at the 45-minute mark, which I try not to go past, so I'm going to cut it here. But please, if you've gotten this far, send me your link, send me your email address. Tell me you're interested in the group talks, either one, the Dzogchen or the monthly group talk that I want to do on my books. So there's the Dzogchen one bi-weekly, and then the ones on my books monthly. So that's it. Thank you guys very much. Have a great day, and see you next time on In Bad Form. Bye-bye.